This video is for everyone that has a tentative job offer. So if this is you, congratulations, you're now in the home stretch of the hiring process. I get a lot of questions about what's next. How long does pre-employment take? When will I get a firm offer? When can I start? How do I complete the requirements? If these are the questions you have, watch till the end of the video as I answer these questions. Before we get started, you could help out by liking this video to help with the YouTube algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of all the new videos that are uploaded, and share with anyone that could use this information. There are some general points I want to cover about the tentative job offer. The first thing is that before you get your letter, a lot of times you will get a phone call. So the phone call is to cover all the different aspects of the job, just to make sure you're interested before the work goes into making the letter and sending it. Because there's a lot of behind the scenes that happens to create that letter. You have to create a profile in USA Staffing, you have to edit and modify everything, link it up to the job announcement, or if you're non-competitively hired, create a profile separately. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So to save that time, a lot of times the phone call will be made first, just to make sure you're still interested and you're okay with all the terms. Another reason for the phone call would be to explain everything that's going to be required for you to complete before you get your firm offer. So that's when they're going to explain what pre-employment requirements apply to you, because every position's different and every person is different. Even if you don't get a phone call, you'll still get a letter. If you need help with the entire hiring process from start to finish, check out our book, Federal Hiring Advice, Your Guide to Government Jobs, available on Amazon. The link to purchase is in the description below. Because the way everything is set up now in USA Staffing generates a letter, it gets sent to you, and there's a link for you to accept the offer or decline the offer, or to request to be contacted. I always recommend that you accept the offer right away and then contact for more questions, because you can always back out at any time. But if you don't accept the offer timely and you drag your feet a little bit, they'll kind of give you a, accept by this date, or they can just pull it back, because at that point you've never accepted the offer and it's a lot easier to pull it. In the letter, it should discuss all of the requirements that you're going to have to complete. But sometimes the specialist doesn't do the research before sending the letter, so they'll send a more generic list of requirements that has everything that could be required, but may not be required of you. So if you get a letter that has a lot of requirements in it that you don't think apply, don't really worry about that, because you're only going to still complete what's required. Just remember, the tentative offer is tentative. It's just everything that is known up to that point and can be adjusted throughout the process. Now, when you get the letter and you accept, then you're going to go through the link again to get through all of your requirements that are listed for you in USA Staffing, because everything is electronic now. So all the forms that are there are completed usually through an online questionnaire. When you fill out the questionnaire, it pre-populates the forms. So if you see, when you're reviewing your forms, if there's incorrect information, you won't be able to edit it in the form itself. You have to go back to the questionnaire to update that. And when you see these requirements listed in USA Staffing, you're going to see that there are a lot of due dates on there. Now, don't let those due dates scare you, because they're just computer generated based on what the time to hire metric says it should take. They're almost never accurate, and they're not enforced. So if you see the requirements on there and it says you have 2 days to get your physical done, but you haven't even been contacted for your physical, don't freak out, because it's not on you. HR will schedule that for you, and if it misses the date, it's not on you. So the only thing that you can do throughout the process is just continue to communicate with your HR specialist or assistant, whoever's working with you through the process, and you'll be fine. I know it can be stressful to see those due dates and think that if you miss one, that they're just going to automatically rescind the offer. That's not usually the case. What happens is, if a requirement that you have control over is taking longer than they feel like it should, they'll give you a deadline to say, turn this form in by close of business on this date, or we'll rescind your offer. So you'll get a deadline, you'll get some kind of notice. Same thing with scheduling. So if they're trying to schedule with you and you can't make availability, then that's when the ball's in your court and they'll pull back. Also, if they've contacted you and you haven't responded, they'll usually contact you 2 or 3 times and then give you a final notice that says, if you don't return our email or our phone call by the close of business of this date, then we'll rescind your offer. There's always some kind of notice. Another thing to know is that whenever you complete your part of the requirements, that doesn't mean that everything is done yet. So a lot of times the forms that you complete or some of the other pieces like the physical or the fingerprints, the equip, those are used to start other processes that happen behind the scenes. And so even though you've completed everything that you've done, it doesn't mean that you're ready for a firm offer yet. That means you just need to be patient while everything else is running in the background. And once everything's complete, that's when the HR person will follow up with you to do your firm offer. And that's when they'll contact you to let you know everything's complete. They'll go over some potential start dates, and then they'll send a final letter just like they did with the tentative offer that has a link for you to accept. And when you're going through the process, there can be periods of silence where maybe you've done what you've needed to do and you're just waiting on HR to do their part, or HR's waiting on, your background to clear or your physical to clear, something else that's outside of our control. That's when there may be periods of silence while these things are working. So if you get nervous about that, it's okay to follow up with HR. Maybe shoot them an email every week or two just to stay in touch, because it can also create a reminder. We're never just processing one person for any given job, so a lot of specialists have multiple jobs that they're recruiting for at one time. And if you stay in contact, you're not being pushy about it or anything like that, but sometimes it can serve as a reminder to say, oh yeah, I forgot that I've been waiting on this person's physical. Then they may contact Employee Health and get the clearance right then. So it's kind of a reminder. It helps them move along through the process and that you're not forgotten. This contact every week or two could also be the reminder to schedule a requirement. So if you're waiting on them to schedule your fingerprints, waiting on them to schedule a physical, and you haven't heard anything in a while, because this is in HR's court, you're safe. There's no fear of having your offer rescinded because that's taking too long. But your contact could remind them to schedule that as well. So just like waiting on the results, it could also remind them to go ahead and schedule what's missing. Now that I've covered how the pre-employment requirements are scheduled or how they're determined, I want to go through some examples of the requirements that might apply to an external candidate, someone that's not currently in the federal government or has been in the government but has a break in service. So one of the first things that everyone wants to do when they get their tentative offer is to negotiate. So as I've already mentioned in this video and in other videos, the first thing you do when you get a tentative offer is accept, because you have the whole window between tentative and firm offer to negotiate and complete all the requirements of the position. So the negotiations are going to be if you have superior qualifications, or if the position's been hard to fill, it's in a remote area, they've had a lot of turnover, or it's a high profile position, in leadership, then there's room for negotiating the salary and possibly the lead group. The way you would do this, I've covered in detail in another video, but you would work with HR and the hiring manager to request that, because it's going to need to be submitted by the hiring manager for approval. You can't just say that you want it and you get it. It's not a guarantee, but you'll need to work with them on that process. Some other examples are going to be the background investigation, the physical, a drug screen, and credentialing. So depending on the position, the duties of the position, or any actual agency policy on what that position needs is going to dictate what pre-employment requirements are going to be needed. So the background investigation applies to everyone. So the background investigation is going to be a combination of your OF 306, your resume, fingerprints, and equip. All of this is going to be scheduled for you by HR. So you're going to get your fingerprints scheduled. A lot of times you do those at the same time as your physical if that's what your position requires. And then you're going to get an equip link sent to you once you've completed everything. And a lot of times it comes in phases. So the first part is the OF306. They're going to look at that, see if you have any criminal history or loss of employment that you've listed on that form. And if you have a lot, it'll be reviewed before they schedule you for fingerprints, because they want to make sure that you're going to be able to pass before they start to schedule these requirements, because they cost money. So it costs money to do fingerprints, it costs money to do equip. So if you have issues with your 306 and they go through the fingerprints, they're going to wait until those results come back before they schedule you for equip, so that it doesn't cost any money and they can see all those results. I have another video on the background investigation process that you can watch as well. Now, if your position has any kind of lifting requirements, or you're going to be walking around a lot, then you're probably going to have to take a physical. And the physical has set requirements for that position that are already determined by employee health and human resources to determine what minimum requirements you would need to be able to do the job without getting hurt. So there's going to be vision requirements, there's going to be lifting requirements that, if you have certain health conditions, you may not be able to work in certain areas. So all those things will be covered in the physical. And what will happen is you'll take your physical and employee health will send the results to human resources. And if you fail your physical, which means that you can't do the job without any restrictions or accommodations, that'll get sent to HR. And if the job is, if the hiring manager is able to make accommodations, so if you have certain lifting restrictions, maybe you can't lift a certain amount of weight that the job might require, they could accommodate you so that you're able to get a second person to help you lift things. There's different things that could be accommodated. If that's possible and the hiring manager feels like they could accommodate that and you could still do the job, then you can still pass your physical with those restrictions listed. But a lot of times the hiring manager may not agree with that. They don't want to make the accommodations, or they don't have the ability to make those accommodations. That's when you would fail the physical and have your offer rescinded. Along with the physical is the drug screen. So depending on your position, there's usually a list of positions that require drug screens that's created by the agency. If your position requires a drug screen, that'll be scheduled as well. Usually it's done at the same time as the physical, and then those results will need to come back cleared before you can get a firm offer. Not every position requires a drug screen, so that's why it'll be dependent on which position you're hired into. Credentialing is another requirement that doesn't apply to everybody. Usually I see it in my agency through medical positions that require licenses and education that have a minimum requirement for those. And all credentialing does is they go in and actually verify what you've submitted through their own process, and they'll contact your work, they'll contact your college, they'll contact the licensing board. They'll make sure that everything is correct and accurate and that there's no strikes on your license, things like that. And then whenever you complete your part of the process, that's when credentialing does their piece, and then it goes to a final board with all of the information that they've gathered, similar to how the background investigation works. And then a board will meet and determine whether or not that they want to clear you for that position. So if they go through and they start doing this research and find out that you've been fired from a position, they'll find out why. That could be a reason why they wouldn't want to hire you or pass you for credentialing. So those are things that they're going to dig into for that process. Now, if you're an internal candidate, which means you're either just changing agencies or changing positions within the same agency, you'll still have all the same requirements, but you may have already completed some and they can carry over to the new position. So one of the first ones, background investigation, If you're staying within the federal government and you already have a completed background investigation and you're going to another position that has the same investigation requirements, you don't need a higher level investigation. A lot of times they can just validate that through reciprocity. You'll still need to do the 306 because that's a requirement of everybody, and you'll probably need to do fingerprints. That's just to make sure that nothing's changed since your last investigation, but you'll probably be able to get away with not redoing your equip and going through that entire process. Physical and drug screen. These, if you're staying in the same type of position in the same agency, so maybe you're an engineer and you're just changing facilities or you're moving within the same facility, you probably won't have to redo your physical or your drug screen. Those will just carry forward because you've already completed them for that position and you're going to the same position. If you change positions, let's say you are in a position now that did not require a drug screen or a physical, and you take a new position that does, then you'll have to complete the physical or the drug screen at that point. But if you're in a current position that already had a drug screen requirement and you go to one that doesn't, or you go to another one that does and you've already completed it, that's when you get out of that requirement. Credentialing will be the exact same way. So if you've already completed credentialing and you're going to another facility or you're moving within the same facility in the same position, maybe you're a social worker, so you're taking another social work position within that facility or another facility in the same agency, then you will probably not have to redo credentialing. The only thing would be is if you're going to a position that maybe requires a different license level, so social workers have different levels of licensure. If you have to have a higher level license, then you may have to do credentialing to verify that, but it won't be as in-depth as the first time that you completed it. Just to recap the tentative offer and the pre-employment requirements. So first thing, when you get your tentative offer, you're going to accept. Then you have the entire process between tentative and firm offer to do your negotiations and complete your pre-employment requirements. The pre-employment requirements are going to be decided by human resources based on the position that you're taking and your current situation. You know, whether you're a current employee, a past employee, or have never been a federal employee before, that's going to dictate what requirements that you have to complete, and human resources will figure that out and schedule them for you. So all you need to do is maintain communication with human resources. If it's been a while and you haven't heard anything, feel free to reach out, maybe every week or two. It could be the reminder they need to either go ahead and schedule a requirement or to check on a requirement that you've already completed that they're waiting on the results, such as the background investigation or the physical or the credentialing, something like that we submit to someone else and we have to wait on those results. So just follow the process, let HR schedule things for you, and then complete things as timely. And once you've gotten everything done, that's when HR will follow back up with you for the firm offer, where you go over everything that's final. That's going to be your salary, any benefits like telework or remote work. All that'll be in the firm offer. They'll also cover your start date, your EOD. You get some choices on when you can start. Usually they'll work in the 2 weeks notice that most people need to their current employer. Once everything's finalized through that phone call, you'll get your letter to accept, and then you'll just show up on your first day and go through orientation. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. If you need to work one-on-one, you can visit the website at www.federalhiringadvice.com and we can schedule a time to meet.